When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times. If one only remembers to turn on the light.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
The ones that love us never really leave us.
Working hard is important, but there's something that matters: believing in yourself. If they can do it, why not us?
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. Today we are actually covering our first story in the Tales of Beedle the Bard. We have recently wrapped up Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and we are moving on to one of the ancillary Harry Potter books in the wizarding world. And to kick us off with the first story, we have Jenn with us.
Hey guys.
And this is interesting to kind of delve into all of these little side stories. We've heard mention of them in the main series. Obviously, Tales of the Beedle the Bard gets a lot of run in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So it'll be fun to kind of dive into these stories a little bit more in-depthly. And the fun thing that I realized when first picking up this book is it's not just the fairy tale. The book actually comes with an added bonus of getting some commentary from Albus Dumbledore. So, we have a lot to discuss. But before we do, we have some comments and some shout-outs to get through. First comment comes from Grant on Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 23, Horcruxes. Grant says, I have a question for Jenn and Dan. When Voldy was creating his Horcruxes, do you guys think there's a tweak to the spell that lets him put a seventh and not half of his soul into an object? And on that note, if he can't, and he splits half of whatever is left of his soul each time he makes a new Horcrux, he wouldn't be left with a seventh of his soul. Half to the power of 8, he'd only have 1/256th of his soul left. Sorry for getting to arithmetic. I wonder if arithmancy is involved. Okay, Grant, here's my thing. You could not have timed this comment any better. With Jenn being on, you could not have asked a more Jenn question than you did. So, with that being said, I will leave this to Jenn.
Thank you. No, I love this question. I always get excited when there's math involved in pretty much anything.
Wizarding math.
Wizarding math. So I really hope that there was an addendum to put onto the spell. I think it's actually something that's contested in the fandom. I think that there are some interpretations that say half, and I think that half is what's referenced in the movie. But I think there are other places that talk about it just being like a piece or a fragment. So with that kind of aspect of it, I would imagine that it's more based on he can decide how much soul he's putting into something. It's a great question because we know that he had in mind the number 7 early on, even before the process starts, because we see him asking Professor Slughorn about it and specifically mentioning that 7 is a magic number, therefore doing 7 fragments would make it stronger and harder to break. So my understanding of it, though, is that I think there's a little bit of a tweak with Grant's math, because he made 6 Horcruxes. He was intended to be the 7th.
Right.
So he split his soul 7 times. So I believe then he would have, it would be 1/128th, not 1/256th of his soul left. Grant did the math for 8 splits, but I think it's only 7 splits because he was the 8th.
Because you got to account for the piece of soul that's still left.
Yes.
In Voldy. Yeah.
Yes. So I believe, if my math is correct, which correct me if I'm wrong, because I might
I never
be,
doubt your math, Jen.
I believe he would, if he was splitting it in half, he would have 1/128th of his soul left. Now, the interesting additional question that I would have, so if we go down this path of saying, okay, Voldemort can split his soul, there's a special flag to put on this spell every time he casts it. And he goes through the motions of saying, okay, he is going to split his soul into sevenths and allocate a seventh of his soul each time he creates a Horcrux. So he does those 6, he divvies out 6/7 of his soul. He has 1/7 left. And then he makes Baby Harry. Is this like if you don't specify it defaults to half? Because then he'd only have 1/14th. He'd have a 7th left. It would get divided in half because he didn't specify, because Baby Harry was never an intended target. So then he may end up with 1/14th of his soul left.
Wow. Okay. So I think to get into this from a non-mathematical, well, not too mathematical perspective, I'm going to tackle it from, I'll leave the math to Jen. So I will tackle it from a narrative aspect where I think the implication in the story is that he splits his soul in half each time, which would then lead to all of the math that Grant and Jen are speaking of. I think it would make a lot of sense if Voldy intends to split it 7 ways. That being said, I don't think that's how that works. So I think it is literally he's splitting his soul in half each time, giving us a fragment of a fragment of a fragment of his soul. So then the question then becomes, if we look at his Horcruxes, as they're created, do they get weaker?
That was going to be my next question. Because then you have, if you go in order of when he's creating, I guess we need to figure out then the order of how he's creating it.
Right. So all that Harry really gets for being a Horcrux of Voldy is the ability to speak Parseltongue and the window into Voldy's mind. Like, that's really all he gets. Versus some of the others that we know of, like the diary, that can literally bring back Voldy's soul and has basically a hologram version of Tom Riddle interacting with real-world things. Or you have the ring that nearly kills Dumbledore, which is also, by the way, the Resurrection Stone. So that's a whole other discussion.
That's a separate, yeah.
That's a whole other piece of magic.
I don't know how that works, but
that's a whole other conversation. You have the necklace, which just brings out your deepest, darkest fears and nightmares, essentially. And we see how it tortured our trio so much. You get a brief glimpse of what the diadem kind of holds, but we don't really get a true effect of that because no one ever actually puts it on.
Right.
We just see it dying, and it looks horrific dying. And we don't know anything about the cup. Here's the thing about Nagini.
yeah.
Nagini is a whole separate thing, too. Because what we're given in the core books is that Nagini has just a special attraction with Voldy. Like, there's a special relationship between that snake and that individual.
Yes.
Is that purely just because Voldy can speak snake language? Is that because of the Horcrux connection? Is there anything special to the snake that the Horcrux has been given to it? Also, if we expand and think about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, in the movies, not in the book, but in the movies, we do learn an interesting history about Nagini. That Nagini was once an actual person afflicted with a blood curse. I don't know how that affects anything.
Where does that fit into this?
That's a whole other separate thing,
Yeah.
similar to the ring and the Resurrection Stone. Like, that's a whole other bundle of magic. Voldy was doing things that is crazy.
Yes.
Truly unprecedented. And when Dumbledore says, like, his attempt at the Horcruxes were unprecedented, I think Dumbledore is talking about, obviously splitting your soul this much because no one had at least known to do that. But also, if you look at the individual cases, there is some crazy other magic at play as well, which is insane to think about.
Now, follow-up question that I had with this, aside from looking at how the amount of his soul could potentially affect something. So if you're the one creating the Horcruxes, because I think this has been brought up before in the context of Harry's creation specifically, does he not feel how much soul he has left? Because to some level he must not, because he creates Harry, doesn't think he's created a 7th Horcrux, and then creates Nagini.
Well, yeah, it does say that each time Voldy creates a Horcrux, he becomes less of himself. So the handsome, charming Tom Riddle, I guess you could argue that Voldy is still charming because he does have an aura about him.
Yeah.
But he loses less and less of himself, thus becoming that snake-like persona or visage, I guess.
So he didn't notice any change in himself after he accidentally created Harry?
I'm thinking that Voldy honestly did not care. Actually, I think Voldy might have enjoyed and really dug into the effects that doing this. Like, he probably sees this happening to himself and he's like, oh, this works. This works for me.
He wakes up the morning after he's created Harry.
With no nose.
With
like,
no
that was the,
yeah,
that
and
was
he's
the
just
nose.
like, you know what? I look good. And that's the...
He's like,
he doesn't
oh.
put any additional thought into it.
He thinks the negatives are positives, which fits his sociopathic
That's fair.
mindset of like, this isn't a bad thing. This works for me. So there is that. But, I mean, we do see it when Harry dies and goes to platform 9 3/4. We do see this fragment of that soul from Voldy, and it doesn't look good.
No, it
I
looks
mean,
creepy.
It's creepy, it's deformed, it's ugly, it's small.
Yeah.
I think that's your indicator of the idea is truly that he did split that soul half, and this is what we're left with.
Yeah. This sad little 1/64th of Voldemort.
Yeah. So the spell could be what the spell is, and then he took it to a whole other level, and like you're saying, Grant, to a level that has consequences.
Yes. That was such a fun question.
It's a cool question, and obviously is a lot to talk about. So thank you, Grant, for that comment. It's a really cool comment. Grant does have another comment on Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 9, The Half-Blood Prince. So obviously Grant is moving through our Half-Blood Prince
Love it.
episodes. Thank you for that. Grant says, why is the Imperious Curse illegal and a first-class ticket to Azkaban, but love potions are all just good fun? You would think that someone would feel very violated after coming down from the effects of a love potion. It's a very sketchy thing to me that never really gets addressed in the books, except for maybe Voldy's conception, which has been used to explain why he doesn't understand love, only survival.
I love this question. I think that's a great question, and that's also a question that I've had with love potions.
Yeah.
They're not... They're made out to be this, like, fun little trick that you, I guess, play on someone, but it's really... It's unnerving, and it's a little bit...
Creepy?
It's very creepy. I'm not a fan of it. It should be a one-way ticket to Azkaban. The Weasleys should not be selling it in their joke shop. The best thing that I can think of as to why it was included was just that, you know, the 90s were a different time, and I think things like that weren't taken as seriously because they weren't as broad and there wasn't as much awareness of things like that back then. But definitely I think society, as it is now, has moved away from love potions being considered acceptable because they're not really based on consent. Consent wasn't really as big of a thing back in the day.
I think the implication in the wizarding world at this time is that the Imperious Curse is something you're choosing to do to someone, and the only reason you would be placing this curse on someone is to do something malevolent, is to do something evil or bad. Mm-hmm. Whereas love potions are viewed as, whether it's right or wrong, and obviously I also agree with you, wrong.
Yep.
But I think they're viewed as, what's the worst that can happen? Just they go out on a date or go to the Yule Ball or whatever, and that's like the extent of it. Like, oh, I need a Valentine.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that's a very youthful naive view of it.
Yes.
And to their credit, in the books, they do show you the more malevolent side of this woman who is infatuated with this person that she cannot have, and then she goes out and gets that person. And the second that he's not under that influence, he's like, I don't like you. I don't know who you are. What is going on? I'm the father to this child. I don't remember that. I don't remember anything. Mm-hmm. It's horrifying. So they do show you how, the really bad effects of this can be. So, they do show a little bit of both. You're right. I can't believe it's so trivialized.
It's very trivialized.
We did have this conversation a couple of times throughout the series that, hey, love potions are concerning.
Yes. Well, and you have in the 6th book when Romilda Vane tries to use it on Harry.
Yep.
Which, in and of itself, a problem. But then you also see some unintended side effects from that, where if it's left alone, it gets more potent.
Right.
So then that leads to Ron getting poisoned. And there's no consequences.
Yeah.
Romilda Vane never experiences consequences for attempting to drug Harry and then inadvertently drugging Ron.
I don't think she even got a detention.
No, she didn't. There was
even
literally never, it was never discussed.
Even they were like, oh, it's just kids.
Yes.
Okay.
It's dangerous.
It's very, very dangerous.
Yes.
And again, to bring up the Fantastic Beasts movies, because apparently they're relevant to both of these early comments. But you see in the Fantastic Beasts movies, Queenie uses it to trick Jacob, if I remember his name correctly.
Yes, it was Jacob.
It's been a minute since I've seen those movies. But Queenie uses it on Jacob, and then for a second, Jacob comes out of it, and he's like, wait, you put me under a love potion? I already love you. Why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. And her reasoning is control. She wants control over that because she's afraid he'll leave her or won't agree with what she wants to do or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's control. It's a stated purpose of control, which is alarming.
Yes. I think that the implications of it are very dangerous, and I think really the answer to this question is just more so based in when it originally appeared in the books, it was meant to be lighthearted, and the consequences of it weren't really thought through. And I think over time she did try to show some of those consequences, but it ultimately just leaves it feeling kind of unaddressed, at least in my opinion. Like it never really, because you never actually see true consequences for doing it.
Well, it's like the Imperious Curse is such a negative connotation because you're taking away someone's free will. Love potion, you're just getting love. Love, that's a positive word.
Right.
What could be wrong with love? Well, you're also taking someone's free will away from them by...
Yeah, ability to consent, which is...
Yeah, it's a problem.
Kind of important.
Yeah, it's a problem. So, yes, we very much agree with you, Grant, that the love potions should be far more regulated and watched than they actually are. Yes. Because it's a problem. So, thank you, Grant, for the other comment. Wow, you're generating a lot of conversation. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you for that, Grant. Our last comment before we get to the actual story is from Viana, who left a comment on Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Luna Lovegood. And Viana says, hot take, what if Luna Lovegood's quote, "The things we lose always have a way of coming back to us," is foreshadowing Harry using the Resurrection Stone in Deathly Hallows?
Okay, first of all, love this. Love the ability to tie things like that together. Because I do think that J.K. did a lot of foreshadowing. Once you get into the second half of the books, I think that she really got into a rhythm with foreshadowing and knowing where she was going plot-wise. And I think she did a really good job of tying things together. You could really tell that at that point she had an end. She knew where it was going. So I love the idea that quote ties into Harry. I will add on to that. It also could tie into Ron.
Okay.
Also in Deathly Hallows when he leaves the camp.
Yeah.
And then comes back.
For sure.
And also tying into like the a little bit maybe of a stretch, but the using the Deluminator too, where that kind of played a role in him leaving and coming back. So I think it could be in a couple different places, but I love this idea that losing Harry in that sense and then him coming back.
So I'm going to be honest. I don't know that it was a direct intended foreshadowing moment. It does work nicely, and especially...
It does.
Yeah, it very much works. So, I mean, we agree with you that it does end up being a foreshadowing comment. I think it's particularly foreshadowing given that the comment comes in Order of the Phoenix, where we obviously lose Sirius at the end of it. So it could be a foreshadowing like, hey, look, this thing is going to happen. You're going to lose this really important thing to you. But they're not always just gone. Yeah. I really don't think it was an intended one, but it works.
She has a lot of that kind of theme going on in the later books, and I think it is also to piggyback on what you were saying about losing Sirius, but not really losing Sirius. It is a common metaphor that's used in grief, where it's you lose someone, but they can still be a part of you. Like you lose the person, but you haven't lost their impact on you, or like they live on through you, is essentially what it's implying, if not outright saying. So I think it can also kind of tie into that. So again, with the grief of Sirius, could also tie into maybe grief of Dumbledore. There's a lot of different things that we see where it could be a metaphor for those interactions.
Absolutely. 3 very strong comments today. So love seeing those. If you want to comment and have a discussion with us on the podcast, please feel free to do so by leaving a comment on any of our social medias. That's Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube. You can find all of our social media at HogwartsAPod. You can also leave a comment on our Spotify by scrolling down on the episode. If you scroll down, there's a poll there as well that you can also participate in. They are up for a very long time, and we love seeing the results of those because some of these questions that I put on the polls are really, really intriguing, and I love seeing how everybody thinks of the question, thinks of the series, thinks of the characters. So please engage with us. Please interact with us. Give us these thoughts so we can discuss them on the podcast. We love doing it. So before we get into the actual story, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot is what we're going to tackle today. I felt it would be good to just give you a little background on Beedle the Bard. Beedle the Bard was around in roughly the 15th century, so sometime in the 1400s, 1401 to 1500. For reference, Hogwarts was actually founded in the 10th century. So just a little reference for you time-wise. And Beedle the Bard generally liked muggles, which we will see in some of his stories, particularly The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. Thought of them as ignorant, but not malevolent, which is a difference.
Which, like, fair.
Yeah. He wrote these stories to resemble Muggle fairy tales. So they bring it up all the time that these stories are the equivalent of, like, Snow White and Cinderella and so on and so forth. Whichever Disney story you would like to take. So that's a little bit of the background on Beedle the Bard and what these stories are about. Now, we get into The Wizard and the Hopping Pot, the first story in the tales. The Wizard and the Hopping Pot is about a kindly old wizard who uses magic for the benefit of his neighbors in this village. He didn't really ever reveal the true source of his power, instead saying that the magic came from his lucky cooking pot. He did have a son who generally disagreed with this willingness to help his non-magical neighbors. And upon the father's death, the son found a package in the pot bearing his name. Instead of gold, there was a soft, thick slipper with a note inside it, which said, "In the fond hope, my son, that you will never need it." The son was not happy about there not being gold in the pot, and thus used the pot as a rubbish pail. So just to start off with the beginning of this tale, I think it does kind of set you up with this fairy tale beginning, like this little village, people coming over to this magical being, helping them with like all their little ailments and whatever. You know what it makes me think of, actually?
What?
If we're tying this to Disney?
Yes, go for it.
Encanto.
I haven't seen Encanto.
I'm sorry. I am talking to a Disney aficionado here. And you haven't seen Encanto?
I'm really bad at like at any current movie.
I enjoyed Encanto quite a bit.
It's on my list.
Okay, well, after recording, we're going to be watching Encanto. No, but it reminds me of Encanto. I guess I'll take this lead then. It reminds me of Encanto, where they have this magical object, which in Encanto is the house.
Okay.
And they use their magic to help the village, to help the town with whatever they need. So this one reminds me quite a bit of Encanto. But
okay.
If you agree, let us know. If you think it reminds you of another Disney story, let us know. But this is what it kind of sparks in my head. Continuing on with the story, that same night that the son finds the slipper note, I guess we're going to call it.
Sure.
A woman comes up and says that her granddaughter is afflicted with warts and wants help like his father used to give. The son rudely dismisses the woman. At that moment, a loud noise comes from the kitchen. The pot ends up sprouting a foot of brass and begins hopping up and down, making a lot of noise on the hard floor. The pot's surface now being covered in warts.
I actually thought this was going to take a slightly different direction, because when he opened up the door and there was a woman there who was asking for help and he said no, I immediately flashed to the beginning of Beauty and the Beast. Where the woman comes, the witch comes disguised as an old woman. He slams the door on her and then she curses him and turns all of the objects in his house into living creatures. Mm-hmm. So that was where my mind went with this. But I like this better, where it's not actually the woman, it's the pot's mad at him.
I have seen Beauty and the Beast.
I am not trying to one-up you with Beauty and the Beast. Let's be real.
The son, obviously disgusted by this pot, tried to vanish, clean, and force the pot out of the house, all of which unsuccessful. The pot ended up following him all over the house and even prevented him from sleeping with all the noise that the brass foot was making. Another knock comes on the door as an old man appears complaining about his missing donkey. Again, making me think about Encanto, which Jen doesn't know, so I'll continue on. The son, again, rudely slams the door. Now, the echoing from the pot mimicked brays of a donkey and groans of human hunger. Human hunger because the donkey is used to help transport goods from place to place and get groceries from the market and such and such. So now the pot is groaning with brays of a donkey and human hunger. This is not all. A third knock comes at the door that evening with a young woman sobbing that her baby is severely ill. Again, the son slams the door. The pot now fills with salt water, which mimics tears that slops all over the floor as it grows even more warts. No knocks come for the rest of the week. Apparently the village has gotten the hint that this son is not helping them. So no more knocks come for the rest of the week. However, the pot still knows about all of the ills happening in the village. So in addition to all of the previous conditions that I've said, the pot now chokes, retches, cries like a baby, whines like a dog, and spews bad cheese, sour milk, and a plague of slugs all over. This must be an awful place to live at this point.
How did he let it get this far?
It's so dumb. I mean, seriously. Honestly, after the first thing happened, you should get the hint. If
I can't sleep after the first night of this, that's the end of it for me.
Right? You would think.
Yes.
How do you let it get this far?
Right.
I mean, and if you're any kind of skilled in magic and you've tried everything you can, and this pot is being quite resilient, there seems to be an option available to you that he's not taking for about a week as this thing gets worse and worse and worse.
Insane.
Can you imagine hearing retching sounds repeatedly?
Why? I don't want to live among the slugs.
Yeah, not
gross.
Good. Not good. So finally, he decides to take to the streets and declares that he will help and cure all of the issues. As the wizard goes down the street, curing, summoning, and helping, the pot becomes cleaner and quieter. Shocker. The wizard fits the slipper onto the brass foot, and the pair go forward together, helping villagers just as his father had done. That is the Wizard in the Hopping Pot. Jen, what do we think?
Okay, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. But
You already were with not knowing Encanto. I am devastated.
I mean, I'm never going to hear the end of this.
Never.
Okay, so my kind of Debbie Downer take on this is there's nothing in this story that indicates that the son feels true compassion for the people. I feel like that's kind of a key thing that's missing from this story, because the way that I read it was that he did it to shut up the pot.
I think that's a fair conclusion to draw from the story, yeah.
And that's the thing where, like, okay, is it good that he changed his ways to help people? Yes. Is there any actual growth happening here other than he's like, you know what? I am tired of not sleeping and waking up and moving around a house that has a bunch of slugs in it. I'm going to better my situation.
I totally agree with you that it doesn't seem like a very altruistic reason for changing his ways.
Yeah, I kind of missed on that for me.
Sure. Totally understandable. And from everything in the story written, I completely agree. So my only question then becomes, was this the same story as the father? Did the father also start out this way and realized that his goal as an empowered individual is to help his less empowered neighbors, and then eventually grew to be an altruistic person? And as he got to know these people and as he got to hear their stories and interact with them, then became like, no, these people are worth helping. These people are worth saving, worth whatever. So this is the start of the son's journey. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it might not be an altruistic way to start the journey. Hopefully, and this is me putting a positive spin.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully he ends up like the father and is more altruistic and realizing like, no, these people are worth the help that I'm giving.
I really hope that that's it. And I think that's a good point about it then does kind of put the father into this gray area of, is he muggle loving or pro muggle because he is altruistic and the son's not, or did he learn that over time? So maybe you can kind of take away that this is like you said, the beginning of his journey. I wish that it had been maybe a little bit more explicit and less open to this kind of interpretation, because to me it does change the meaning.
Sure. No, I totally get it. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of your breakdowns at all, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
I will, once again, put a positive spin on it.
Yes.
And say that, part of that is just the growth of people in general. Mm-hmm. When you're younger, you have this more selfish perspective. You have a more self-centered point of view where you're only thinking about how to better your own situation. And then as you grow older, you think that, hey, there's a bigger world out there. I need help from others and I need to interact with others to get a fuller life.
Yeah.
And, you do come to realize that as you grow older. So maybe this is another way of kind of showing that, where the older father knows it, but the younger son doesn't yet. And again, this is the start of his journey. Hopefully by the end, which we don't see, to your point, you're hoping that that's the story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I'm
think,
putting positive spins that aren't in the story.
Yeah, I do appreciate that your extrapolations from the story are in a positive direction.
But you're right. You're right in all of the critiques you're making.
It's just, yeah.
I don't think, to your point, that the son's decision here in the story is for the good of the neighbors. It's to get himself a night's sleep.
Yeah. Look, sleep deprivation can do
crazy things.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We have delved very far into this story about the Wizard in the Hopping Pot, which is awesome. We are going to take a break and then come back with Albus Dumbledore's input on the story of the Wizard in the Hopping Pot, which is fascinating. So stick around and we will be right back with Albus Dumbledore's thoughts. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy and Cody and join them on the Outlet.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Introducing Virtuo Up, the latest in a long line of innovation from Nespresso. It's innovation you can touch, sense, and taste in every single cup. With a 3-second start, easy open lever, and dedicated brew over ice button, it's even easier to enjoy your coffee your way. Sip for yourself. Shop Virtuo Up exclusively at Nespresso.com.
All right, so we are back from break, and we are tackling Albus Dumbledore's commentary on The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. So I will say, we went in depth on it in our discussion in part 1 of this episode, but on my initial read of the story, I thought it was pretty simple. Mm-hmm. I did think it was a pretty straightforward little story. Nothing too tricky or complex about it, right?
Yeah, it's only 3.5 pages.
Yeah, super straightforward. It does read like a common modern fairy tale of sorts. Fair. Well, Albus Dumbledore starts off his commentary by saying, if you thought this was a simple tale, you're an innocent nincompoop.
Aww.
And I'm like, wow, Dumbledore just
called you out.
Eviscerated me in the first comments of this tale. I'm like, wow. All right, Dumbledore, what you got? Yeah. So Albus goes into a pretty stunningly lengthy commentary on this very short children's tale. He interprets The Wizard and the Hopping Pot as a pro-Muggle story with a Muggle-loving father magically superior to his Muggle-hating son. And that is amazing that story did not get immediately burned at the time that it was written. Again, we're roughly talking about the 1400s. And Dumbledore goes on to say that witches and wizards during this time period in the early 15th century were being persecuted. So attempting to help a Muggle neighbor may mean your own death.
Yep.
So any story promoting, like, hey, no, help them, was not well received generally. So he breaks down this story in a completely different way than I thought it could possibly go, which you'd expect from one Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. He adds a footnote onto this little detail about the persecution of wizarding individuals. And that footnote indicates that many were adept at actually escaping their death sentence, because, magic. Yep. However, deaths did occur, and he references one familiar name. He references Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, otherwise known as the Ghost of Gryffindor Tower. He was stripped of his wand prior to facing the execution, and wasn't able to magic himself out of his jail cell, and thus ended up almost headless.
Poor nearly headless Nick.
Nearly headless Nick. So that's just tossing it in there, history to bring us back to Hogwarts, which I really, really appreciated.
Just dropping little bits of lore.
It was a really nice touch, I thought. In a footnote.
Yep.
Excellent use of a footnote. But Dumbledore continues that wizarding families were prone to losing specifically young members of their family to these persecutions, to these executions, due to the inability of young witches and wizards' ability to control their magic, making them more noticeable to the general public. So, in 1689, the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy sent wizardkind underground. A revised version of this popular tale, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot, was then put out into publication, which featured protecting a wizard from torch-bearing neighbors by the pot swallowing those neighbors whole, eventually forcing the village to strike a deal of peace between the remaining villagers and the wizard. Then, the swallowed people, upon the deal being done, would be burped up from the pot. And I guess that's the altruistic bit from the wizard, is like, okay, we're good. You leave me alone, and here's all of your villagers back.
But it says slightly mangled. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much darker.
I guess it's still meant to portray the wizard in an altruistic manner, because he's, hey, look, we struck a deal. We're good. I don't need to, hurt you guys anymore. We're good. We're good. Here's your villagers back. We're cool. Everything's fine. Meanwhile, the villagers are probably like,
why are we all getting eaten by a pot?
oh, they're probably terrified. Yeah. It's a terrifying retelling of the story.
Yeah, that's much darker.
By the 17th century, wizards that fraternized with muggles were outcasts from their communities. Insults for these muggle-loving individuals included mud wallower, dung licker, and scum sucker.
Really?
Yeah, they're bad.
They're pretty lame.
Yep, not good. Here's a familiar name, at least, that we get in Dumbledore's commentary. Brutus Malfoy, editor of Warlock at War, which is an anti-Muggle publication. Shocking, that may be.
Crazy.
Yep. In 1675, Brutus wrote that friends of Muggles had low intelligence and were weak magically. The prejudice, however, eventually died out as brilliant wizards, and Dumbledore puts in such as myself, love Muggles. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it eventually died. Maybe less so.
Yeah.
But I think it was still in existence.
Still a bit too prominent.
Yeah, I think Albus is getting a little ahead of himself there, but that's whatever. So the last objection to the Wizard in the Hopping Pot came from Beatrix Bloxham, who lived from 1794 to 1910. Jen, do you know the math on that year?
116?
It is a 116-year-old person. Yeah. That is insane.
Yep.
Good for Beatrix, I guess.
Well done.
But Beatrix is the author of Toadstool Tales. What are Toadstool Tales? She basically believed that the tales of Beedle the Bard were damaging to children. So she took issues with the subjects of death, disease, bloodshed, etc., etc. Instead, she rewrote many of the Beedle the Bard tales, as well as other tales of her age, to fill youth with a more happy and healthy thought. And there is an excerpt from one of these tales that is just absurd to actually read. Mm-hmm. So I will do my best to read you a little excerpt from this. Then the little golden pot danced with delight, hoppity hoppity hop, on its tiny rosy toes. Wee Willikins had cured all the dollies of their poorly tum-tums, and the little pot was so happy that it filled up with sweeties for wee Willikins and the dollies. But don't forget to brush your teethy pegs, cried the pot. And wee Willikins kissed and hugged the hoppity pot and promised to always help the dollies and never to be an old grumpy wumpkins again.
Beautiful.
Wow. Wow. Predictably, her version is loathed by children and not well received. And that is the end of Albus Dumbledore's commentary.
Is it me, or does that just kind of end?
It does just kind of fall off.
Yeah. It's like he forgot to write a conclusion.
He leaves that hanging with that. Mm-hmm. Like, that is literally the last thing we get.
Yes.
And he's like, this is so bad, let me just let you sit with this for a while. Like, this was presented as a potential replacement.
Yes.
Wow.
Yikes.
However, I will give Albus this. He took a story about a wizard failing to help his neighbors until he was annoyed enough to do so, and broke it down into the wizard muggle socioeconomic politics of the age.
Yes.
Which is the most Dumbledore thing Dumbledore could possibly do. So much respect for that analysis. I know when I read it, I was like, wow, he is taking this real serious. Mm-hmm. It's the Wizard in the Hopping Pot, and he's going deep.
Yep.
Like, I was impressed. I don't know. I don't know how you thought about it.
No, I think it's really cool, and I like that it was a little add-on to it. I don't really think I read the Tales of Beedle the Bard when it came out, and I didn't know that Dumbledore had commentary after the stories either, so I think that's actually really cool. The one thing that stands out to me, though, when I read this is, so I feel like Albus Dumbledore can kind of be, in this kind of context, maybe a little bit of a proxy for JK. So she's writing these tales, and then she's also writing this commentary. Mm-hmm. And she picks Dumbledore to be the commentator. And Dumbledore, he's a very nuanced character.
He very much is.
So
yes.
This isn't something where she needed to insert commentary, right? So, like, she picks someone who is supposed to represent this, like, fair, good intentioned person. And then you look through the kinds of things that she puts in here, and the way I read it is kind of an analogy to a lot of things that have happened throughout history where there have been, others, groups of others, and whether or not you're accepting of those people. And Dumbledore is on the side of accepting outsiders or working with outsiders, all of those things. And it ends with the cutesy little story from Mrs. Bloxam, which is so overly cutesy that it's sickening.
It's painful. Yeah.
And it's also interesting because it's presented in that way intentionally, I think, as a contrast to this story, which is meant to be teaching morals, right? So, like, I read this and I say, oh, right, this is clearly sickening. They're not getting the morals from it. That makes it, it's dumbing down how you talk to kids about actual moral issues. And the intent of the original story was supposed to be that, being pro-Muggle is the positive, and it was supposed to present that in a light and in a way to teach it to kids. And I just find that so interesting because that says so much on, like you talked about how Dumbledore is talking about the socioeconomic different levels and implications of that in the wizarding world. But all of that is essentially an analogy too for our world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are many parallels between those things. So I think it's interesting that she just has all of these things that seem very pro working with outsiders and being inclusive and not dumbing things down for children and teaching children morals and all of those things.
I find it interesting that she probably got called by a publisher and was like, hey, we're thinking about putting out, like, this Beedle the Bard book, mm-hmm. right? Here's this idea. Hey, we'll make money on it, whatever. And she's doing it for charity. Yeah. A lot of the proceeds from this, I think all of the proceeds.
All the proceeds to this went to either Comic Relief UK or Lumos, which was her charity.
So, I mean, it's for charity, which is mm-hmm. great. But she probably came back with like, okay, now I got to write these fairy tales. Cool. So she puts out the fairy tales. And then the publisher's probably like, this is great, but this book is like 15 pages long. Like, we need a little something else to charge people, like, whatever the book was priced at when it came out.
Pad it with something.
Right. So she's like, how am I going to put in, like, a commentary on The Wizard and the Hopping Pot? Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a complete left turn and make this about wizard-muggle relations in the 15th century. Yep. Brilliant move, I think. Yep. I mean, truly inspired work to just fill it out, to make this, like, a good chunk. And to tie it in with a lot of the books. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the subject matter is relevant to the books, but also dropping in footnotes where you get Nearly Headless Nick, where you get a name drop of a Brutus Malfoy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's very well done.
For me, I think this was a surprisingly fun read.
It was cute.
I don't know what I was really expecting coming mm-hmm. in, but I think the light-hearted nature of the fairy tale combined with the hard-hitting analysis of Dumbledore made it a really interesting read.
It was a nice juxtaposition.
Yeah. So we hope you've enjoyed this little discussion on the first tale in the Tales of Beedle the Bard, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. If you like more, guess what? We're going to be back soon with another episode tackling the second story, which is The Fountain of Fair Fortune. So come back and see us for that. Again, comment on our socials, engage with us. Again, you can find us at Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of which are at Hogwarts a Pod. And then if you're on Spotify, scroll down, you can comment there, and you can also participate in the polls that we put out, which are up for a very long time. So thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging with us, and we will see you soon on another episode. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.